Hey guys, my name is Loveless, and we are back with Mollitudo. Still don't know if I'm saying the name right at all. I just put in my computer just Molly because that's the closest thing I'm gonna get to it. But that's just me trying to make things simpler for me. So now we are chapter 9. Deku got saved, thank God. So now we're dealing with the aftermath, or the beginning of what would be the aftermath. When Katsuki and the others got back to the dorms, it was midnight. They had expected to reach a darkened common room, however, the lights were on. It felt like a repeat of when Deku and the others had returned from the work study as they found themselves surrounded by a worried Class 2A. "Why are you guys awake?" Ida asked, managing to sound concerned for the class even though his eyes were tired. "There's school tomorrow." "Koda told us when he returned," Momo said softly, her eyes gentle as she ushered them in. "Are you guys okay?" Ashido, Sero, Kaminari were surrounding Kirishima, and in return him, since Katsuki was right beside him. "Dude, we knew you guys were helping with Midoriya's disappearance, but we didn't think he would actually allow you to go rescue him," Kaminari said, a hand pulling his hair anxiously. Ashido placed a hand on Kirishima's shoulder, and she quietly said, "Are you okay?" Kirishima nodded, a small smile on his face. "It's all good. We got Midoriya back." "Is that blood?" Katsuki turned as Sero leaned in, his face alarmed as everyone scrambled around him. "Did you get injured? Momo, first aid kit," Jiro said somewhere to his left. "No." Katsuki cut in before the chaos could unfold. "It's not fucking mine." He was trying to not think of the blood coating his shirt, where Deku had clung with bloody hands, his sobs quiet as he desperately reached out for Katsuki, wanting him to be beside him. "Is Midoriya okay?" Asui asked, and Katsuki forced himself to listen to the questions as she asked Yutaraka. "Yes, he will be," was all Yutaraka said. The class seemed to understand that they didn't want to talk about it. Momo said, I think we should let them rest. You guys should go wash up." "Yeah, we also need to talk to Hound Dog," Todoroki finally spoken, looking only at the rescue group as he reminded them with a deadpan voice. Katsuki stormed away, ignoring how Ashido exchanged a worried look with Sero. When they returned to the common room, there was only Hound Dog there. He looked at them gently as he hovered near unsurely. "Come here, pups." They walked to him. Katsuki reluctantly followed behind. He really didn't want to talk right now. He didn't even want to think. He just wanted to sleep and go to class, then actually go see how the nerd was doing. He wanted to see for himself that Deku was still alive. He was fucking fine. He just needed to get over the things he saw in the room by looking at the nerd himself. Hound Dog told them to sit, and Katsuki felt his arm tugged by Kirishima when he didn't move. He rolled his eyes, planting his ass on the seat as he crossed his legs. "Are you guys okay?" Hound Dog started. Katsuki was really sick of people asking him if he was okay. It's not like he was the one lying in the hospital bed after being kidnapped for days. "Not really," Yutaraka was first to admit quietly. "I'm really worried for Deku." Hound Dog hummed. "Understandable. It must have been hard to see. I want you pups to know that it is normal to be affected by what you saw today. Seeing a friend in pain and traumatized is never easy for anyone." He looked at everyone and then continued. "It is also not your responsibility to make sure Midoriya gets better. Your own mental health is most important, first and foremost. I know some of you might not want to talk about it. I know some of you might not want to talk about your feelings in front of others, so reach out to me if you have any concerns. The school is here to support your mental health. Understand?" They nodded, and Hound Dog placed the number on the table. After assuring them that he is there for them, He stalked off, leaving the group sitting silently around the table. Yudaraka was the first to break the tension, as her small voice asked the real question which carried so much weight. Deku's going to be okay, right? Everyone looked at her, and when she met Katsuki's eyes, it was like reality sank into her, and her face crumpled. Every time I close my eyes, I see Deku just crying on the floor. For a moment, I don't even think he recognized me. Kirishima leaned forward, placing a reassuring hand on her back. Ida had leaned into her, and Yudaraka cried as she hugged the two of them. Katsuki understood. He remembered how he had held Deku in his hands. The warm body who Katsuki knew had bulked up over the course of UA had become limp and noticeably thin. The only warmth he had was from the blood streaking out of his struggling body in his hands. He stared at his hands, the same hands which were covered in his blood. We just have to see him wake up. We just have to see him wake up. Todoroki's steady voice cut Yudaraka off from her sobbing as they continued looking to the ice fire user. His face betrayed no emotions, yet his hands shook slightly as he grabbed his knee. He'll wake up. He looked at Katsuki. Are you gonna go visit him tomorrow, Bakugo? Yes, Katsuki replied irritably. He just wants to sleep this off. He wants to stop seeing the nerd in his head. We should all go together, Ida suggested. No. Katsuki spoke without thinking. Everyone looked at him, and he took a deep breath, not wanting to blow up. Let me go myself first. Yudaraka glared at him. You're not the only one who wants to see Deku, Bakugo. Her voice was flat. Round Face would never understand. Katsuki's nostrils flared as his temper rose. He couldn't explain this in words, but he needed a moment with Deku. He needed to see for himself that the nerd was there. He didn't want the fucking extras inside with him. Fucker. Yudaraka. Kirishima interrupted. I think Bakugo needs a few moments with Deku, alone. He was side-eyeing Katsuki. I think seeing Deku like that, it must have really affected him. His voice was soft. We can all go at a slightly later timing. He looked at Kirishima, then at Katsuki. Katsuki just stared back silently, not agreeing, but not disagreeing either. Fine, she said reluctantly. 2 hours. We'll go 2 hours after you. The next day, Katsuki made his way to the hospital after a tiring day of class. Tiring because he didn't get much sleep, or, well, for that matter. Thanks for coming, Katsuki. Inko stood outside the door to Deku's room. She smiled tiredly. Katsuki noted the dark circles under her eyes. Where are your friends? They said I can come visit Deku first, alone. Katsuki replied shortly. Her mouth parted in an O shape as she nodded in understanding. He's still asleep. He didn't wake up at all, but the doctors did a check this morning and he said that his brain activity seems pretty positive. He might wake up in the next few days. Katsuki nodded in acknowledgement, pushing the door open when Inko moved aside. Even though he was prepared, he still flinched when he saw Deku sleeping in the bed. Now that Katsuki could take a look at Deku without the panic coating his vision, he could see how bandages covered his head, his wrists. There were also silver bandages visible on his chest, covering whatever that was not hidden by the blanket. He walked closer, and Inko said, I'll give you some privacy, Katsuki. She closed the door behind him. Deku looked thinner, exhausted. Katsuki kept his eyes trained on him while he slid into the chair beside him. The blood coating him entirely had been washed off, leaving behind a pale pallor. Katsuki didn't know which was worse. He looked at Deku's chest. Rise, fall. Rise, fall. He's alive, idiot. The tight voice in his chest, that Katsuki didn't realize that had been there the entire time, slowly loosened at the sight of Deku's chest moving. His hands itched to touch Deku, to cement the fact that Deku was here. He gave into his impulse, a hand tentatively rising to meet Deku's cheek. Slowly, almost timidly, his thumb brushed against the freckles that stood out against the pale skin. He wondered if Deku will wake up if he talked to him. Deku. His voice sounded unnaturally loud to his ears, oddly empty without sound of Deku's voice accompanying it. He felt awkward. Wake the fuck up. Silence. You better get your ass up before I beat you for being so lazy. Not even a twitch. Katsuki sighed. He sunk into his seat, arms crossed as his legs splayed out for support. He watched Deku silently for a while. Katsuki honestly wondered why Deku affected him so much. The nerd was annoying, and his stupid face was always smiling like nothing ever affected him. He entertained the thought that it was because he was the first to see the picture of Deku, alone, cuffed in a room, which got him so invested in his disappearance. Deep down, however, he knew what he really thought. There was something else at play here. There was an inexplainable feeling that Katsuki had towards Deku. He knew All Might was right. He had always been strangely good at interpreting their relationship. What it was, though, Katsuki couldn't figure it out yet. He filed that thought away for another time. Right now, he just wanted to be at Deku's side. His hand moved upward and brushed Deku's matted bangs aside. Wake up soon, nerd, he said softly. He sat there until nighttime, even after the nerd's friends had came and left. Slice. Pain. Hands running down his chest. I wonder if you'll scream if I carve scars into you, Vex breathed out beside Izuku's ears, lips barely grazing his ears. Izuku squirmed, breathing hitched. His wrist continued to struggle. He was back on the table, shirt ripped. He could feel the knife kissing his chest, as Vex teased his skin with the sharp edge. I'm so excited, Izuku. Vex's hands trembled as his eyes shone. I want to hear you cry. His free hand lifted from his chest, placing on the area beside Izuku's head, as Vex leaned closer, pressing the knife down. Izuku stared defiantly into Vex's eyes, as he created a small cut. Vex seemed to shiver, laugh as he said, Oh, you aren't scared at all, aren't you? He moved up the knife again, creating another small cut besides the first. Then he pressed down. Burning. Izuku couldn't help but flinch, but he bit his lip hard as a deeper cut was carved. Vex did not rest, only lining another slightly deeper cut beside. Vex continued to do so as Izuku continued to twist his wrist. I really want to stab you, but not yet, Izuku, Vex whispered reverently as he continued to create cuts, both horizontally and vertically. Please, move away, please, please. Loud beeping. Izuku? A soft feminine voice. It's okay, you're okay. Izuku squirmed as he felt trapped. His hand shifted, and he panicked when he felt something graze his wrist. There was something covering him. His breathing hitched again. He struggled, feeling his fist clench as he painted, trying to escape the restraints. Was he back there? Was the rescue a dream? No. Get off. The cuffs were pulled off, and Izuku felt like he could breathe again. His eyes opened. He saw green eyes staring back at him. Mom? Izuku's heart continued to beat like a hummingbird, and the machines reflected so. He looked at his mom, breathing stilled. Deku? Was that Kachan? He snapped his head to the side and saw Kachan. He was standing beside his bed, a blanket clutched tight in his hands. He was staring intensely at Izuku, an imperceptible expression on his face. When they made eye contact, Kachan lowered the blanket onto the chair behind him, and he moved his hand slowly towards his, giving Izuku time to move away. He grabbed his fingers. "You're in the hospital, stupid Deku. You're fine," Kachan said calmly. Listening to Katsuki's steady, gruff voice slowly calmed down. He started to feel the soft bed beneath him, the bandages covering his chest, and the cast around his knee. He breathed. It took him a while, but the beeping of the machine quieted as his heart felt less like it was beating out of his chest. His eyelids fluttered as he stared silently at Kachan, absorbing his features. It was like he hasn't seen Kachan for a very long time. He needed to know Kachan was okay, that Vex didn't get to him. Kachan looked healthy. His eyes looked tired, but he was there and whole. "Izuku," he heard his mother call out again, a worried pitch to her voice. "Izuku, do you remember where you are? Do you remember us?" He turned to her, looking at her wordlessly as his brain echoed with the remnants of Vex calling his name. His eyes unfocused. Kachan grabbed his fingers tighter, and Izuku sluggishly moved his gaze back to him. "Deku." His voice sounded uncertain. His face tightened in worry. "Oh, they want me to reply." "Mom, Kachan," he said quietly, blinking slowly. Mom seemed to relax her shoulders, eyes tearing up as she placed a hand on the bed. "Oh, Izuku," she sniffled. "You're awake." "How long was I—" Izuku's voice trailed off. The door opened with a loud slam. Izuku jumped. His eyes looked at the door, wary filling them as he instinctively anticipated the lean figure. But it was only Aizawa who rushed in. "Midoriya, you're awake," Aizawa said, face relaxing minutely as he walked in. Behind him was All Might, and Izuku teared up. "All Might?" "Midoriya, my boy." All Might's eyes were wet as he wrapped his hands around the rail beside his legs. "I'm sorry, we took so long to find you." Izuku shook his head, sniffling as he wiped at his eyes. "It's okay. I'm just glad that I'm out." He looked at Kachan, squeezing the hands that were still in his grip. Said explosive student just sat back, relief flooding his features, as he let out an audible breath. He rested his elbow beside Izuku's head, using it as support of his chin. He averted his eyes, like he was awkward about all the emotions he just displayed. Kachan's hands twitched, but they stayed clutching Izuku's fingers. "I'm glad you're awake, problem child," Aizawa said as he sank into the chair. "You gave us quite the fright." At Izuku's questioning glance, All Might said, "Your chest injuries required quite the large number of stitches. There were some really deep ones. You lost a lot of blood. Not only that, your head had 2 painful cuts on them, and you had a concussion. The doctors weren't sure if you were going to wake up, because your brain scans didn't look good." Mom sniffled at that as she twitched her arms like she wanted to hug him. "You were asleep for 5 days, Izuku." "Mom, it's okay. I'm awake now," Izuku reassured, his other free hand reaching to hold his mom's hand. She grabbed it, placing it beside her face as her tears flowed. "I know, baby. I'm glad you're awake," she said gently. The door opened again, and an officer walked in. Izuku felt his breathing pick up slightly at the appearance of the man he did not recognize. The officer had a clipboard in his hands. He seemed to ignore the glances of everyone staring at him as he walked closer to the bed. "Midoriya, I'm sorry to have to ask you this so fast, but do you think you can share what happened to you?" he said straight to the point. Aizawa and All Might seemed displeased at the question, but they didn't chase the officer out. Izuku blinked. As his fingers tightened around Kachan, his brain fuzzed, his face turning carefully blank. "Vexen is currently in jail for kidnapping and torture of a minor. We just want your testimony to throw him in jail for good," the officer added. "Vexen. Vex." I love when you're in pain, Izuku. Hands in his hair, on his wounds, smearing his own blood around. Tools trailing down his arms, pain in his kneecap, whispering in his ears. Good boy, Izuku. If you ask nicely, I might think about it. A hand on his chest. Fucking get out! Come back later, you fuck! Kachan's voice cut through the panic Izuku didn't know he spiraled into. The hand Izuku was clutching was now covering his palm completely. Izuku could hear high-pitched gasping noises. It took him a while to notice that it came from him. Officer Nori, please come back later, Aizawa said, standing up. I don't think my student is in the state of mind to testify right now. The officer nodded, backing off. Sorry, I just thought it would be good to get the report of what happened as fast as possible. All Might just placed a hand on his shoulders. We understand. We'll call you when he feels ready. Thank you, officer. I'm sorry, Izuku stammered, after the officer had left. I can't right now. No, we're sorry, Midoriya, Aizawa's exhausted voice replied. We should have chased him out, instead of assuming just because you were acting normally that you were okay. You should be. Kachan hissed slowly. He then looked at Izuku, his eyes looking immeasurably guilty. Sorry, Deku. Should have chased him out immediately. Should have known otherwise. Izuku knew he meant the panic he had woken up with. Izuku's eyes watered as he nodded in understanding. His hand that was in his mom's grip was back on the bed, gripping the sheets tightly. He looked at Kachan. Thank you, Kachan. Said blonde clicked his tongue. Mom just placed a hand in his hair, ruffling it gently. The hand in his hair felt like a vice. Izuku felt his stomach churn. He felt overwhelmed, like everything was happening too fast. Can I have some alone time for now? Izuku gasped out, his head itching to the side as he used that as an excuse to move his head away. Aizawa and All Might nodded in understanding, standing up. Mom followed. After giving Izuku a worried look, Izuku tried to smile at her. Kachan tried to stand up, but Izuku just turned his palm outward, grabbing his hand tighter. Kachan, stay, please? Izuku said, albeit desperately. Mom seemed to look more reassured at that. Following his teachers out of the room, leaving the two of them. Kachan looked awkward as he sat back down in the chair. Thank you for saving me, Izuku began softly. When Kachan didn't reply immediately, he choked out, Can you just talk? He was scared of returning to the fog in his brain. I wasn't even the one who saved you, nerd. You saved yourself, he gouged. Their hands shifted, fingers lacing, as Kachan pressed gently onto the area under Izuku's thumb, rubbing the soft flesh in repeated motions. It should be awkward. They were just friends. But Izuku felt safe and grounded. I was scared, Izuku admitted, eyes darting from Kachan to his hands. But then I heard your voice. Kachan startled. A number of emotions flashed past his face, too fast to decipher. After a pause, he said, What, you're going crazy or something? Izuku laughed. That's what I told the you in my head, too. Then I realized I probably heard you because... He stopped. Kachan looked unconvinced. What? Because what? His face seemed wary, like he was afraid of what Izuku was going to say. Izuku gulped. His ears felt slightly red as he said, eyes still trained on their hands. I never told you this, 'cause it's kind of gross. He smiled softly. But to me, you're like a symbol of victory in my head. So, I think I was unconsciously trying to win over the panic in my head. Silently, Izuku, fearing Kachan would find it disgusting, looked upwardly tentative, but Kachan's face looked just slightly odd, jaw relaxed with a tinge of pride. So what? voice me told you not to give up? Kachan guessed, with a lot of cursing. Izuku chuckled. Kachan snickered. Bet I scolded your ass. Izuku nodded, eyes watering. There was a short silence before Izuku asked, how did everyone know I was going to wake up? At Kachan's questioning look, he clarified, I mean, I don't think Aizawa-sensei and All Might would have came every day together. Doc said your brain activity was increasing, so you might wake up today. Aizawa and All Might dropped by as a precaution. Kachan's face twisted in disgust as he continued. The stupid police guy comes every day because he wants a testimonial as soon as possible. Oh. Izuku's voice was small. He looked at his hands, not knowing how to reply to that. The hand in his grip twitched as he glanced at Kachan, who had his eyebrows furrowed. Kachan? Kachan said, looking pissed, then guilty. I didn't even do anything. I was useless. We couldn't even find the place you were kept until you called us. Izuku shook his head. Your voice helped me to be brave, Kachan. It was just my stupid voice. It wasn't me. Kachan snapped angrily. Izuku knew how he must have felt. He had felt the same way during the training camp, but he had to let Kachan know how much he'd really helped him. Kachan, Izuku said firmly, shifting his other hand and covering their intertwined hands. It's because you inspired me so much, Kachan. I was thinking, at the time, what would All Might do? What would you do? I was in so much pain. His voice hitched. I wanted to just escape, shut down my mind. But I came back because your voice told me to focus. And then Kachan's forehead smoothed out, and the harsh red eyes turned soft, softer than anything he had ever seen on Kachan's face. Well, his voice was low. Good job coming back to us, Deku. Oh my god, I did this all in one go. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Okay, we done. Finally. This was a damn roller coaster. This is only the beginning of the whole recovery process, so. But also, like, part of the thing that really, like, resonated with me was, like, when Kachan was like, oh, looking at his body, his chest rise and fall. And I'm like, I do that same shit to my cat. And my cat is, like, old as shit. She's, like, 14. And I'm like, my biggest fear is, like, all of a sudden seeing her and her chest is not moving. So that gives me a flashback of what I experience on my day-to-day. But this was amazing. Took me a while to get to it, but I did it. And then I have no idea what I'm going to record next. It's either going to be a it's either going to be a crack fic or it's going to be Quirk Knife. I still have to decide because I suck at making decisions. I am indecisive as fuck. Like, really bad. But enough with that. If you want to see more of this, any of this, you know what to do.